r/ask Reddit. Have you ever encountered true evil? How? I've told this story before about meeting a murderer. Was a journalist on weekend duty. Got called out to a story. Guy claims his car was hijacked with his 2-year-old son in it. I met him at the police station. He seemed devastated. I was devastated. I mean, I'd done plenty of grisly crime stories, but a missing kid is next level awful. Next day I had my day off. The regular crime reporter called me. They'd arrested the dad and found the little boy's body at a rubbish dump. He did it out of revenge for his wife cheating. It still bothers me to this day how I could have felt so much sympathy for this man. I shook his hand. I cried with him. I'm usually very good at picking up when someone is off. Just goes to show you, true evil disguises itself very well. I had a student kill 3 members of his family. I didn't see him as any crazier as other struggling kids. It's something about our mental vocabulary not being able to imagine the possibility of that level of evil. A homeless guy with face tattoos, screaming about wanting to kill everyone, huffing out of a bag. Sure, we can get there in our brains. But thinking about things like Jeffrey Dahmer going to the grocery store, asking the clerk how their day was, maybe dropping his change in the ringing kettle on the way out, holding the door for a lady with a walker, then going home and eating humans. It doesn't compute if you are the grocer. When I was a boy, I had a wicked stepmother who reveled in beating me. She would beat me when my father was not present, threatened to kill my brother if I said anything. She would use whatever objects were convenient to beat me with. Wooden spoon, hairbrush, dowel rod, rolling pin, her hands, fists, belt, whatever. One time she used a serpentine belt. She'd hid me where it wouldn't be visible when my father wasn't around. At one point, she had me drop my pants and underwear and beat me until I nearly passed out. I jerked out of pain and kicked of her lap and got her in the face. She proceeded to pick me up by my leg and beat my balls with a wooden spoon. I'm not sure if she counted as evil, but she certainly counted as sadistic and vindictive. The first boyfriend I ever had, we were both 16. He was a pathological liar and a sociopath. He slowly became possessive and controlling, wanted to be together constantly, would accuse me of wearing things that were too revealing, isolated me from my friends. When I tried to break up with him, he threatened to rape me and kill my dog. He pushed me out of a slowly moving car while his grandmother was driving. I was dumb as a box of rocks and had no self-esteem, so I didn't know any better. I nearly changed schools. My parents put me in therapy among other things. He ruined the first 2 years of high school for me. Over 20 years later he sent me a message on Facebook asking me how I was, like we were old fucking pals. I didn't respond. Maybe he changed as an adult, but I seriously doubt it. I found out he died a couple years ago. He was involved in a crime involving his young daughter, and I'm pretty sure he was facing prison time. I honestly think the world is better off without him in it. I'm an EMS provider and was called once for a stabbing victim. Female in her 30s. The boyfriend kicked her front door off the hinges and stabbed her 30+ times inside her apartment. I rode the victim in and watched the trauma team work her in the ear. Not long after she was pronounced, we received dispatch to police holding because the boyfriend had cut his wrist up, chicken scratches, and he needed assessed. We had to go over and I had to assess his vitals and put some gauze on his wrist. I've met some scary people in the field, but this guy was next level. Lifeless eyes. There wasn't an ounce of remorse in his demeanor. I couldn't have her, so nobody will have her, was his attitude. Had I not been surrounded by police officers, I would have been concerned for my own safety. I worked with a man that clearly had sociopathic tendencies. He had a history of mild to moderate traumatic brain injuries due to his need to participate in risky activities. He showed signs of having high-functioning autism, but he was afraid to be diagnosed. He said that he never felt any emotion and did not feel a connection to anyone. He was fascinated by the thought of suicide and murder. He worked at a large auditorium where they host large events with many people in attendance. One day, he came to see me and told me that he had been reading about mass shooters, that many of them have autism. He felt that autism was an excuse to be a mass shooter. It was bone-chilling to think that he worked in a place that held large amounts of people, was obsessed with mass shootings, and felt that his very likely autism diagnosis was an excuse for mass shootings. Truly evil. In my senior year of high school I had a study hall class at the end of the day, and instead of studying I would leave campus for an hour until my friends got out. There was another guy in the same situation and we would hang out together during that hour break, usually smoking cigarettes and just talking. He seemed pretty normal to me. I mean, he had some odd quirks about him but nothing that would indicate what he later did. A few years after graduation he was living in an apartment building that also housed a lot of students from a small college that was in town. Apparently he became obsessed with a young female student that lived below him, and one night he broke into her place, murdered and cannibalized her. He's been in prison serving life without parole ever since. My aunt and uncle were deep Christians and odd when I was growing up. They have 5 kids, but homeschooled because school is evil. They had no TV because that would be evil. I was bored when at their house and saw both of them as kinda weird. About a 2 decade ago we found that he had been sexually abusing their 8-year-old daughter. When confronted he admitted to it, along with using thousands of dollars to buy things for the other women he was with. His daughter lived with me and my wife for a few years when she was about 18. She was angry at herself for breaking up her family and had blocked all her memories of him abusing her. She never had counseling because they didn't have money for it and thought it was all a lie. She asked and we found the original medical and police reports for her. I did not enjoy going over them with her. I hope to never see him again. I went to college with a guy who seemed normal. He was maybe a little too much into porn, but was otherwise a pretty cool guy. I go on a vacation over the summer and come back and everyone in my college friend group is buzzing about how he's in jail now. Turns out that, after being rejected for sex by a woman, he killed her and then killed her baby daughter, who I think was around 2 years old. There was also evidence he had sex with her, though it isn't clear if he raped her before he killed her or if he had sex with her corpse. Dude is now serving 2 lifetime sentences, and I'm sure he isn't treated well by the other inmates because he killed a kid. That's about as evil as you can get without committing genocide. My mom's second husband drugged, beat and raped her repeatedly, and when she tried to leave, he threatened to make her watch while he killed me. We ended up running away while he was out of town. He was trying to make us move closer to his family, to isolate us from us, with what we could pack in a single trip in the car. Hid with family or friends for several years, until we could get our own place. By the time she left, he'd stolen my mom's car, my college fund, and her entire retirement account. We had to start over with almost nothing, except the thousands in debt that he racked up and then ducked, leaving my mom responsible for it. Even after, he stalked my mom up until she remarried several years later. I can remember him calling even 5 years after they divorced, demanding to know where she was and who she was out with. Was friends with a guy who literally lived life like it was a drama movie. Whenever I became friends with him and started hanging out with their friend group, he'd say you've been inducted, like I was joining the Illuminati or some shit. I can't even explain all the crazy stories that I've experienced with this sociopath. The one moment when I realized this guy is fucking insane was when he and our group of friends were talking about someone they knew, saying they wouldn't be surprised if that person shot up a school. Then the leader of the group said if the guy they were talking about decided to shoot up a school and ask me for help, I'd help him. I know a lot of people who deserve to die. He said that in the most nonchalant way. Fucking weirdo. I felt like my aunt was pretty evil, and she was a kindergarten teacher no less. She pulled my arm out of its socket one time when I was 4, and she was helping me cross the road. The final visit to her, when I was 16, every opportunity she got she would whisper in my ear, "You are worthless. You are nothing. And just keep walking." The visit ended with her trying to strangle me after I took issue with her trying to force feed my brother Ginger, and that was the last time my family spoke to her. I remember fantasizing about getting back at her for some way for a while, but then moved on with my life and grew up. Years later, she was being her typical self with my uncle, her brother, and berating him, calling him worthless, and he shot her in the head, killing her. It was a real tragedy for the family as he shot himself afterwards as well, but I certainly have not missed my aunt.